Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. This year is Ryan Coyle back with my weekly solo segment, the Fantasy Football Stardom Situm Show. Coming off week 9 here with our second loss of the season. After skipping weeks 7 and 8, we were 5-1 going into last week. We're now 5-2 with a narrow margin of loss in last week. We'll recap it as always. Our start list got 99 points, sit list got 102 points. Our starts were Aaron Rodgers, Trevor Lawrence, Raheem Mostert, Tyler Algier, Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin, Gerald Everett, Taysom Hill, and Bengals defense. That lineup combined to put up 99 points. And then our sit list, 102 points, so a 3-point defeat there. A pretty big swing and miss on this sit. I had Justin Fields, and he decided to go out last week and have the most rushing yards ever by a quarterback in a single game. So that was fun, but been pretty good for most of the year. We sat Geno Smith. He had a pretty solid week. We sat DeAndre Swift and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They both had very poor weeks. We sat Michael Pittman, who had a very poor week. Mike Evans, had a pretty poor week as well. Kyle Pitts and Mike Gesicki both had poor weeks. And then Jets defense versus the Bills had a pretty solid week. So that led to our 3-point loss, but still 5-2 on the season. And here we go, marching into week 10, feeling pretty good, feeling pretty confident, and ready to give you guys a winning start lineup. Make sure to check this out for your daily fantasy lineups if you're playing on like those budgets and whatnot, or your season-long teams as well, dynasty teams, whatever it is. I think I got some pretty good information here for you guys this week. So we'll start it off at the top with our start list. We have we're going to go Daniel Jones, surprisingly cracking the list this week. He has a pretty good matchup against the Texans. A lot of quarterbacks, or some pretty good quarterbacks on bye this week with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. So if you still need a guy out on the waiver wire, Daniel Jones could be sitting out there. I like his chance this week. I think this is a good matchup against the Texans, who are the worst run defense in the league, I believe. And Daniel Jones has added some very good value with his legs this season. Jalen Hurts had, I believe, 2 passing touchdowns last week against the Texans as well. The one thing that kind of worries me, the passing options for the Giants right now are pretty banged up, but this is a kind of slim pickings time. If you don't have one of these top guys, you might have to revert to a Daniel Jones. Matt Stafford's a guy who hasn't been that good this year, but he's concussed. He might be kind of viewed as a better option. Or Kyler Murray, he's dealing with a hamstring injury. It's kind of slim pickings this week. So if you're in a pinch, I think Daniel Jones has some pretty good value. Second quarterback, we're going to go with Darr versus the Colts. I had this listed before it was announced that Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow both were going on IR. Still like Devontae Adams, obviously, in this matchup. This game could be an ugly game, or it could be like the Raiders find a way to go out and get the offense click and put up like 30-plus points. Don't really know, but he got going with Devontae last week. Devontae had two touchdowns. He had one, including a bomb. There's a bunch of tough matchups from top to bottom this week when you're looking at teams. And obviously, if you have guys like a Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes, you're starting them. But Josh Allen potentially might be out this week. Kirk Cousins plays the Bills. There's a bunch of tough matchups this week. I think Carr has some upside against a Colts team that seems to be going in the complete opposite direction. Don't know what they're doing with the coaching staff right now. I think Carr has some upside, and Devontae's going to get a healthy amount of targets, and that usually leads to success. Now we go on to the running backs. We're going to go our first running back. I'm going to take Leonard Fournette versus Seahawks. Is a pretty weird one, as the Bucs have really struggled to run the football all year, only 60 rushing yards a game, but they play a Seahawks defense this week that's given up 138 yards per game on the ground. The Bucs are going to be able to get it going this year. Maybe it's able to start this week. If it doesn't start this week, it's not going to start anytime soon. I'm predicting a 2-touchdown performance from Leonard Fournette in this one. If you want to throw that bet out there as well, Leonard Fournette, two-time touchdown anytime score. So I think that this is a pretty favorable matchup, and they have to find a way to run the ball, or they're going to be a simple one and done, maybe not even make the playoffs. I think this is a week that he might be able to get going. Second guy, a guy who struggled this year. I was high on him coming into the year. He hasn't been able to get going. Seems like he dances a little bit too much in the open field, or he struggles behind this pretty poor offensive line. That's Najee Harris versus Saints. It sounds like they're going to be including Warren in there, the other running back, but I think coming off a bye, I think that they kind of went back to the drawing board this past week. They got a rookie quarterback in there, I believe, making only his third or fourth start now. I think they're really just going to try and ease Kenny Pickett into this thing. Like I said, went back to the drawing board, and they're going to find ways to get the ball into their best running back's hand. I think Najee Harris is going to get the football a bunch this week. The Saints also allowed 2 rushing touchdowns to Kenyon Drake last week. If Najee Harris can at least find the end zone, and then he usually finds a way to contribute some catches, he should be around like a 12 to 15 point performance. I like him this week, and I think he's got a chance to kind of hit the ground running over the second half of the year. We go to the receivers now. We're going to go with first receiver. We're going to go with Brandon Ayuk versus the Chargers. He's been trending up at least 6 targets in his last 3 games. He had 11 targets in 2 of them, and he's had 6 catches or more in 3 straight games as well. It seems like he's doing what Brandon Ayuk does. We've seen this his first 2 years in the league. Starts out slow, and over the second half of the season, kind of gets going with Jimmy G and really kind of takes off. Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey. This is a pretty explosive lineup now. George Kittle back healthy. Most of the attention from the defense is going to be going towards those 3 guys. That leaves Ayuk as the man to hurt you. Chargers secondary and defense as a whole is banged up. I like Brandon Ayuk to continue his surge over this last part of the year and have a really strong second half to the season. Second receiver, we're going to go with Devontae Smith versus the Commanders. I think he's due. He hasn't had a very good game in quite some time. He exploded for 8 catches for 169 yards and a touchdown in the first matchup against the Commanders. Feels like each week the Eagles have like a specific guy that they like to build the passing plan around. Last week it was Goddard. Kind of second fiddle was A.J. Brown. The week before against the Steelers, A.J. Brown had his day. I think Smitty's time is coming and he's able to have another good game. Just got to go kind of back to the blueprint that they had in that first game. There was a lot of kind of jump balls and Smitty was out there making some plays, but I think he's the emphasized guy in the passing game this week. We'll go to the tight ends. We're going to go with Cole Kmet versus the Lions after, I believe, the first 2, if not first 3 weeks, of the season, he failed to even receive a pass, catch a ball. Justin Fields has kind of came to life, and this Bears offense is looking a little bit more exciting. Kmet's has been one of the more beneficiaries in the Bears offense of this. He gets a matchup against the Titans this week the Lions this week, who have one of the worst pass defenses in the league. Like I always say with the tight ends, it's kind of just like throwing darts at the board. You got to hope you hit a bullseye with them if you don't have George Kittle or a Travis Kelce or a Dallas Goedert in your lineup. Second tight end, we're going TJ Hawkinson at the Bills, newly acquired tight end by the Vikings. Stepped in last week and hit the ground running right away. 9 targets for 9 catches, 70 yards. First week with the team, I expect that production to continue, especially if Matt Milano's not in the lineup, one of the better linebackers in the NFL, and the Bills' top linebacker as well. If he's not in the lineup, return back from injury this week, Hawkinson could have another nice day. And then defense, we're going to start the New York Giants versus Texans on my NFL Big 5 Games of the Week podcast. This was my favorite bet of the week, taking the under in that game. Neither team nearly is lighting it up on offense. It's like a 40.5. I think this is a low scoring, like a 2017, 2013 type game for the Giants to win. I don't really think the Texans get going. I think the Giants kind of sell out and do everything to stop Dameon Pierce, make Davis Mills beat them, and I don't think he can do that. So I really like the Giants defense this week. So run back real quick through our start list. We're starting Daniel Jones, surprisingly. Don't think I'll ever have him on this list again. And Derek Carr, the quarterbacks are tough this week. Leonard Fournette and Najee Harris, 2 kind of disappointing guys at the running back spot for most of this season. I think they have nice weeks. Brandon Ayuk and Devontae Smith at receiver, Cole Kmet and TJ Hawkinson at tight end, and then Giants D versus the Texans. Now we go to the sit list. First quarterback on our sit list, we're going to go with Kirk Cousins at the Bills. I think this is a comeback to earth type of game for the 7-1 Vikings, one of those bigger games, kind of bigger spotlight. I know it's still only at 1 o'clock, and Josh Allen might be out, which might kind of take some of the pressure off this game, but I think Kirk Cousins is kind of due for a Kirk Cousins-esque game. I know I had TJ Hawkinson up there. I think he will still be able to produce, but I think we could see multiple interceptions, playing in a raucous kind of road environment. Kirk Cousins could struggle in this one, and I think this has the potential to be an ugly game too if Josh Allen's not in the fold. So I'm looking to keep Kirk on my bench this week. Second quarterback, Matthew Stafford versus the Cardinals. I have him on here. He has missed 2 practices this week with a concussion, so we would just void that if he's out and kind of mix him with take a quarterback off the start list, and we would just go from there. But he's just been unplayable this year. I think like 8 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, really struggling behind that terrible offensive line. If Cooper Kupp's not producing the receiving game, no one is on that offense, and he has no running game to go with him. Just been a really tough kind of season for Matthew Stafford. If he is able to somehow clear concussion protocol and get in the game, I think he's still in for a rough performance against the Cardinals defense. That if they do one thing, they bring pressure, and against this Rams offensive line, that's exactly what you want to do. We go to the running backs now. I'm going to sit James Conner at the Rams. I think that this is a tough matchup still with it being the Rams. You still have a nice front. You still have Bobby Wagner and a pretty good rush defense. There in Los Angeles, they were able to shut down Leonard Fournette last week. That's not saying much, but Benjamin has gotten a lot more involved since James Conner first went out of the lineup, and he's gotten a lot more touches for them. And the passing game has also kind of taken off a bit more with DeAndre Hopkins back in the fold. To James Conner starting him this week, I think he's better off on your bench. Second running back, we're going to roll with Clyde Edwards-Helaire again after he had a poor game last week against the Titans where he wasn't really used much. He plays the Jags this week. I think that kind of continues. Isaiah Pacheco stays as kind of the main back, but last week they threw it 67 times, I believe it was. Patrick Mahomes was like 43 for 67 or something. Showed no type of commitment to the run game. Obviously, that's not something that they'll be doing each and every week and sustainable, but Helaire's kind of getting rotated, I think, out of the main kind of role in the running backs in this offense. Jerick McKinnon in there as well. It's just kind of an ugly backfield that I don't want a part of right now. We go to the receivers now. First receiver, we're going second week in a row, Michael Pittman Jr. versus the Raiders. I'm not touching kind of anyone on the Colts this week except Jonathan Taylor if he plays, because I feel like that's the only thing that they are going to be able to maybe do is hope he kind of breaks off some long runs. This offense all year has been inept. They've shown no ability to consistently move the ball down the field through the air. Michael Pittman Jr., a very good, talented receiver, is kind of feeling the negative effects of that, even against a pretty poor Raiders secondary. I have no confidence in them this week. A first-time play caller coming in as well, a 30-year-old kid who's never called plays in the NFL, college, or high school before, it looks like. I think it's a bad offensive situation for the Colts this week, so I'm keeping Pittman on the bench. Another Viking we're keeping on the bench this week, we're going to go Adam Thielen at the Bills. I think Tre'Davious White comes back this week. That just adds another tool to that secondary. I'm not sure if he's a guy that shadows or if he's kind of sticks to his side, but I think it's going to make it kind of hard on that passing game, and that's another main reason why I have TJ Hawkinson as a start, because I think he's the beneficiary of some checkdowns and stuff like that. The Bills' defense, still one of the top defenses in the league and a really strong secondary. Like I said, I don't like Kirk Cousins this week, so we're going to keep Thielen on the bench as well. Tight end, we're going to put Noah Fant on the bench this week versus the Bucs. Bucs still have some pretty good pieces in their linebacking core and their safeties to kind of match up with him. And if you look at his box score last week, he had a really nice week, I believe going close to, if not over 100 yards. But one of those catches was like a 50, 60-yard catch where he broke a few tackles and forced a few missed tackles in there. So kind of one big play exploded those numbers a little bit. He hasn't really been the main guy in this passing offense this year. They've really been relying on the running game with Kenneth Walker, the third in there now. But like I kind of said with starting the tight ends, it's kind of just throwing a dart at a board and hoping either they have a good week if they're on the start list or they don't if they're on the sit. Second tight end we're going to go with Robert Tonyan versus the Cowboys. I'm just not trusting anyone on that Packers offense right now. They've been completely inept for this whole season, especially in the passing game. Tonyan's had a few nice outings. But the Cowboys have some nice linebackers too. So I just have no confidence in the Packers right now. And then our defense, we're going to sit the Colts at the Raiders. Kind of like I said with Derek Carr, this was before. I thought maybe Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow and Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams all would finally be on the field together. I saw a stat today. They've only been on the field together for 43 snaps all season together. So take this kind of with a grain of salt, but still I think the Colts